Coming up, we preview the inter-stadium battle between the Jets and the Giants. Are these two defenses doing it in different ways, but still capable of making this another low-scoring affair? Will Sawuon Barkley be the key to the New York Football Giants' success? And what the heck's going on with Daniel Jones? We dive in coming up next. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast. We are your hosts, Adam Armbrecht and Andrew Makowitz. It is the kind of battle, not from Seattle, because I need something that rhymes, but it's going to happen in New York. It's going to happen inside the same stadium. Question for you, Andy, before we dive in on injury reports, the matchups, Wilson, Jones, Tyrod, all that stuff. Do they have a separate visitors locker room that the Jets have to go to on Sunday? Because I don't think they should be allowed into their home settings, even though these guys share the same stadium.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting one. I don't know how many locker rooms do you prepare for the interstadium rivalry? Do they have three? Do they have an auxiliary one? Something tells me that everyone's going to feel comfortable and literally right at home in this matchup. Really, the only difference is going to be what color some of the end zone is, right?
I don't appreciate it. I think that the Jets should have to get onto a bus and they should have to do like a circuit. They should have to get out to Route 1. They should have to take 287 and then maybe just, go 20 miles out and then try to loop their way back and see if they make it to the stadium on time. Bottom line is, man, we're going to talk matchups here, but first and foremost, the injury updates for the New York Football Giants. And then, Andy, you have a pressing question about Daniel Jones that I have to answer for you.
I do. Yeah. Well, some of the injury reports just broke. John Michael Schmitz, center, who's been out for the last few games. He actually was part of some group drills that the team was doing. It sounds like all indications are that he might be back for this game, which would be a huge boost to the offensive line, solidifying the center position. Andrew Thomas practiced again somewhat, but they were very coy about hiding the offensive line and quarterbacks like around the bend behind the practice facility. I think they put up bed sheets at some point. Maybe there was a dumpster that was rolled in. Like, I have no idea what they're doing, but clearly they're playing coy with Daniel Jones, Andrew Thomas, and the rest of the offensive line right now.
Do you think that if John Michael Schmitz is able to play, he'll plug in at center? Then Pugh's been playing at left tackle. Phillips has been in the mix now here, though, too. I'm trying to break down what would be the perfect offensive line and who gets bumped out if John Michael Schmitz comes back. Who's your starting five on Sunday?
Yeah, it's Pugh. After the last couple of weeks, it has to be Glowinski because he has really righted the ship the last couple of weeks. He's actually looked great. I think he's had one pressure against him the last couple of weeks. Like, shockingly from the depths, like if you look at the Undertaker meme where he just kind of like pops up, that feels like Mark Glowinski right now for the Giants. Unbelievable, right?
It's insane. It's insane.
It is, but he's playing well enough where he should be out there. And then obviously you put John Michael Schmitz in the middle. I think you put Ben Bredesen over at the right guard position, and then you have Tyree Phillips on the right. I think that is probably my best guess on what the offensive line will look like should JMS be able to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although guys like McCathan, they'll get bumped back down, obviously. Glowinski playing well is like a bit of like, it's like it's a good thing. And also it's like, so it makes me go back and then think, so the Giants didn't make a bunch of mistakes in the offseason, decisions and trusting certain guys. What it really brings to light potentially too here is Evan Neal that bad that the guys that play alongside him actually suffer greatly at the hands of his incompetence? That's for another day, but certainly going to be interesting to see who ends up all across that line there.
Yeah, it is tough. It does make you wonder. It's like, the other piece of that you're mentioning, I don't want to go too far into detail on Glowinski because this is not just a full Glowinski episode for everyone that was really hoping for it, that came in like, give me 30 minutes straight on Mark Glowinski. The thing that I'm thinking about is like, it's weird because he was getting beat like a drum right off the line of scrimmage in the first couple of games. Like, it wasn't, there were some schematic things that looked strange. Like, he was getting beat in one-on-one matchups consistently. And since he's been back, thrust in the lineup because of all these injuries, Adam, like, things haven't changed. They still said, let's go at Mark Glowinski, and he's been able to hold his own. It really is kind of confounding as to like how a few weeks later, all of a sudden he seems to like get his footing underneath him. really strange the first month of the season for him.
Also bucks the trend. I mean, this is all positives. Bucks the trend that Bobby Johnson's a horrific offensive line coach and he can't function and he needs to be fired. I mean, listen, we went through the reaction paces around this stuff, but we can make a case that the Giants organizationally just being, steady as we go here through the early struggles maybe is paying dividends as we move forward. Let's talk Daniel Jones before we turn our attention fully into this game, though. I'll tee it up. Daniel Jones says neck feels good, ready to go. Giants say can't play. That's the summary statements here.
Yeah, and when they ask the coaching staff, specifically Brian Daboll, okay, Daniel Jones says he feels good. Like, when can he be cleared for contact? And it's like, the doctors need to clear him. It's like, okay, when is that happening? They're like, doctors need to clear him. It's just the same answer recycled over into, and it's one sentence. And so, Adam, my simple question back to you is, why
Mhm.
can't someone just ask, what do the doctors need to see in order to clear him? Is it like he needs full range of motion in his shoulder and neck area? Is it there has to be 2 weeks of no soreness in the area? It has to be that the bone isn't clicking against some joint or his clavicle. Like, what is the thing that the doctors need to see in order to clear him?
I don't think that has anything to do with him being cleared per se, in all honesty, right? Like, and I, whatever questions the media would want to ask, they're not going to get any answer beyond that when the doctors say that he's good to go, right? Now, what I find really interesting about it is Daniel Jones is saying, like, hey, like, I feel good. I feel ready to go. And the team is saying that he's not. Now, with a neck injury, what you don't want to do is be responsible for someone having a really serious injury by putting them out there before they're ready. I think the other side of it is one of two things. Put on your tinfoil hat, folks. The first one is what I said initially a couple of weeks ago about you looked at Buffalo, the Washington matchup, you look at this Jets matchup. We know that the Raiders are also a really hard team when it comes to having Max Crosby there, but maybe that's a little bit more comfortable of a landing spot for Daniel Jones to return. You can be safeguarding against matchups and not wanting him to get hurt. You can be safeguarding against this offensive line, finding some consistency before he gets back out there. The other part is, whether you like it or not, Tyrod Taylor has played pretty good football. The team has played pretty good football. They're coming off a win. And I think that there can be some world where the Giants are trying to massage their way through. Let's allow it to get to the place where Tyrod gives you a bad game and it's easier for Jones to come back off of that. Or this team keeps winning and you keep extending this timeline. I think it can be somewhere in the middle of all of that. But I just don't believe wholeheartedly that these responses are, oh, when the doctors say. They have to have some sense of when he's ready to go. And Daniel Jones kind of voicing that he feels ready is just starting to create a little bit of a divide here between whatever perception is and reality might be.
Listen, I get the tinfoil hat
Thank you.
situation, but what I want to go back to is the actual crux of my question, though, where it's like, you're like, yeah, we're not going to get anything else. They're just going to say when the doctors clear him, it's a neck injury, right? But
Yeah.
every other injury in every other player, in every other circumstance, you get the clarifying questions. When it's a high ankle sprain for Saquon Barkley, what does he need? He needs to be able to
You haven't
plant that.
gotten it from Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas has a hamstring injury. It feels a little better. It feels a little worse. You haven't gotten clarity on what his injury looks like. It's been weeks.
Well, no, but with Andrew Thomas, they said, we tried to give it a go. He felt a little pull. We think because he's not a skill position player that he can come back faster from that injury. Because of that tweak, it kept him out longer. They're giving you more details than they are about Jones.
Sure.
When there's a high ankle sprain, when there's a knee injury, a sprained MCL, PCL, we need to see stability. There needs to be the ability to cut. When it's an oblique injury, there needs to be no soreness. You need to be able to stretch. There are checkpoints in which players need to hit in order to get back out on the field. It's driving me crazy to think that they won't just give an answer that says, once this happens, then he can be on the field. They're saying the doctors need to clear him. What do they need to clear him of? They've already said that these two neck injuries are unrelated. So if they are unrelated and it's not an abundance of caution that there's correlation and causation between the two, they have to just explain what it is, just like every other injury that happens.
I guess, yeah. This one seems to got you a little hot under the collar. I mean, it feels like once the neck is healed, then it's healed. Like there isn't a getting progressively better. It's once it's 100%, it's 100%, and if it's 99%, then he can't go out. But I understand. What is
But
that,
there,
right?
but Adam,
What
also
crystallized will clarify.
there's also the neck injury is this
Yeah.
like big all-encompassing thing that has bones, muscles,
Mhm.
tissue,
Yep.
neck vertebrae, spines, nervous system. Like it has a whole host of things in it. And like when
Connects the
someone
head
hurts
bone to the
their
foot
ankle,
bone. I get it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You've played operation or doctor
I
before where
get
it's
it.
like it buzzes you if you get around the head area, but like every other thing, they don't just say it's a lower body injury. They say it's an ankle, it's a PCL, it's an MCL. Like the neck is a million different things, and I just feel like it's frustrating because what you said, Daniel Jones is not saying I still have soreness or I don't feel right. That would make sense. Then it's like, okay, once he starts feeling good, then we can start thinking about him being back on the field. Right now,
Yeah.
he's saying he's good. We're hearing the doctors won't clear him. Why? What needs to happen? And to me, that's the most frustrating part. Is it feels like they're avoiding and being evasive for and not giving anyone any insight into this, and it's just really bothering me. I don't know why.
Just like getting to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop, the world may never know. As it stands right now, the assumption is that he will not be available for Sunday and that it will, in fact, be Tyrod Taylor. I hate to leave it open ended and ambiguous there, but the Giants are, so why not me as well? We turn our attention now over to this matchup, though, where the two quarterbacks are presumably going to be Zach Wilson for the Jets, as we know, and then Tyrod Taylor. The fun thing in this matchup is defenses to me. And if you're watching over on YouTube, you can see we're talking about exposing Wilson, protecting Tyrod. Two defenses that now the Giants in more recent weeks, the Jets for the entirety of this season, have been able to get after the quarterback, have been able to be disruptive, have been able to get turnovers, but they're doing it in two very different fashions, Andy.
They are. It's really interesting the way that the Jets have been approaching everything. Nick Filato on Twitter did a great job breaking it down. Why the Jets are so interesting on the defensive side of the ball. They are one of the lowest blitzing teams in the entire league. They are bottom 5 in the amount of times they actually blitz and bring extra pressure. Yet they're top 5 in the amount of pressures they get on the quarterback. So they're not having to rush blitz to the fifth man or sixth man to be able to disrupt things. They're doing it with just their defensive front. And that's what makes them scary as a defense, is that means that there's an extra guy or two that's sitting out there, playing center field, being able to read the defense and plan accordingly. When you can get pressure like that as a defensive front, it opens up everything in the playbook from a defensive scheme. And you saw it against Jalen Hurts. They were able to get pressure against the Eagles, only rushing their defensive line against one of the better offensive lines in the league. It creates havoc for even a good team like the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because specifically when we look inside this matchup, injury wise for the Jets, you had Sauce Gardner, you had DJ Reed, both dealing with concussions, both logged full practices Wednesday. Presumably they'll be ready to go out there. And this is where, to the point about not needing to overbring pressure, is if our front can get that pressure, if our front can impact the pocket, that's going to go ahead and force you to make your plays and try to make your passes against a really talented secondary. And when it comes to the New York Giants, I have real concerns there because we've liked Darius Slayton's season so far, but he can struggle at times to get separation. Isaiah Hodgins has gone to the wayside. Darren Waller, I think that becomes a really fascinating watch because even though he has speed, I again don't associate him as being a burner at tight end or a separator and creating these pockets. A lot of the work that the Giants did last week against the Commanders was in the short passing routes and being explosive after the catch. Do I think that you can use those same ideas here fundamentally against the Jets? Yes, but as you mentioned, when I can keep two linebackers kind of staying at home there in the middle of the field, when I can bring a safety down into a zone look coverage or to clean things up, I don't know if those explosive 20-plus yard plays are going to be as readily available for the Giants. So that's going to then put it back onto Tyrod and saying, can he be smart with this football? And can he utilize ultimately, I think, Saquon Barkley, right?
Yeah, we talked about the pressure that the defensive front can get for the Jets, which is really formidable. If they get Sauce Gardner back and
Yeah.
they don't have to bring a safety down to be able to blitz, or they can find a way to mitigate the run for the Giants, then you're talking about Sauce Gardner against pick your poison of Giants wide receivers. Maybe
Against NFL preseason standout and burner Jalen Hyatt, who exposed Sauce Gardner, pantsed him down the sidelines, and if not, ironically, for a underthrown ball from Tyrod Taylor, would have been burning him, giving him the deuce sign going down there. I mean, this is all coming together in a beautiful way for the Giants.
it is interesting. Like, you got to think that you're going to see a repeat of the Jalen Hyatt Sauce Gardner matchup, and Sauce Gardner is one of the top 5 to 7 cornerbacks in this league. But we saw, as you mentioned in preseason, like there's only so much you can do against speed, right? And so, like,
Yep.
if they're going to let Sauce Gardner be one on one against Jalen Hyatt, and for some crazy reason, our offensive line can hold up and not allow that pressure, that's where the opportunities to hit a deep ball are. You'd be surprised if they'd be bringing over safeties consistently on Sauce Gardner's side. The advantage of having him is that he's a lockdown type corner that doesn't necessarily need support. He can kind of be on his own island and eliminate one of the offensive weapons for the other team.
Yeah, of course. So, you go back to this last game here against the Eagles, as you mentioned, for the New York Jets. We talk about, okay, pressures. They're not necessarily bringing a ton of guys. They only had 2 sacks in the game, but they had 4 tackles for a loss. They had 12 pass deflections in that game. If I want to talk about the other impact here of this defensive front and the way that they try to expose teams, it's just being smart, right? Being aware of where the pocket is, of where the timing is. We think about those quick drops, those 3-step routes. If you get your big bear paws up there and you start putting the Giants into second and third and longs, it's going to become a much different game script for this team. So I agree with you. The secondary is going to be a problem potentially. Those matchups are going to be difficult, but you have to find a way to go out there and win it. And maybe we'll flip back into this backfield for both teams, kind of where I think the core of this game is going to be played. Maybe the way the Giants win this one is on our defensive side of the ball. And looking at a guy like Zach Wilson, who in that game where they did, yes, beat the Eagles 20-14, this was a 19, I believe, of 33, 186 yard, 5.6 yard per average, 5 sack, 41 QBR for Zach Wilson. There's damage that was done with the running game here. The other big factor is obviously going to be Garrett Wilson. Whether or not Zach is the perfect QB, he seems to have taken enough strides forward and has a dynamic enough playmaker as a number one that he can still get 8 for 90 over the course of a game and move these chains. Do you look at this as being not only the defensive front will start there? Let's start with that, and then I want to work into Deontay Banks and really saying, hey, is this another opportunity for him to go toe-to-toe with one of the top in the league?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're a few weeks away from when Zach Wilson was never going to throw another NFL pass, according to everyone, right? The
Sure.
pressure was on. He did not look good, and he's kind of calmed things down a bit. Let the
Yeah,
defense shine. Don't make the crazy mistakes. Just keep the team in the game. Kind of what they're asking Tyrod Taylor to do for the Giants, right? Now that our defense is starting to ascend. The thing with Zach Wilson, though, is also like against the Eagles, they won. He completed 57% of his passes, right? Like he
that's right.
hasn't been that accurate at him. He's only had one game with a passer rating of over 82, and that was the Kansas City Chiefs game where he completed 71.8% of his passes, 2 touchdown passes, 105 passer rating, looked the part. Every other time he's been extremely mediocre, and that's all they're asking him to do. But on the
Did okay,
season,
albeit against the bad Denver Broncos defense, 19-26, only 200 yards, but 73% completion percentage, a 36 QBR. But just to round out that, and that's in recent weeks, right? The last few games, he's done less damage to the team and given themselves a chance to win, right?
Exactly. And he had a 78 passer rating against the Broncos, a 73 passer rating against the Eagles. He's going to live in that 75 passer rating place to
Yeah.
give the defense a chance and uh Salah a chance to win the game. Over this season he is a 73.4 passer rating. That is literally what he's kind of been the last couple weeks, and they're game managing him accordingly. So the Giants need to be able to say, okay, he's going to just make sure that he does not lose the game. I'd be shocked if they let Zach Wilson just step back in the pocket and let it rip and try to take advantage of our secondary. That to me would be a surprising game plan. I think you're going to see both sides. It's like the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other. We have really good run games. We have really good defenses. We just want our quarterbacks to not lose us the game. It does feel very similar between the both New York teams.
Oh, yeah, listen, the Giants, Wink Martindale, you're going to bring more blitzes. You're going to put him under pressure. Zach Wilson isn't a running quarterback, but he's mobile. He can get out there certainly and play in a little bit of space. You're going to try to get him to make some errant throws. You're right when you talk about mirroring one another. I mean, he's a young quarterback. Tyrod's an older quarterback, but it does feel like the script is going to dictate. Get away from the line of scrimmage a couple of times, scan the field, make a couple of cross your body, off angle throws. Does the defense come up with a big play or not? The secondaries, all the way back to the safeties on both sides of this ball, are quality teams, right? So it's just like, I feel like we're going to see a lot of these contested moments down the field. I do wonder if whoever chooses to risk first is going to be the team that ultimately gets themselves a lead or ultimately costs themselves the game, right? Like one deep throw from Zach Wilson, then Deonte Banks picks it off, Xavier McKinney, whoever it may be, and you go, whoops, just flip the field position. You were down 3, now you could be down 10. Are you going to come back 10 points as the New York Jets? Likewise, I'm not trumpeting the Giants here, right? One bad play from Tyrod, one fumble like we saw last week late in that game with Sawuon Barkley. All of a sudden, this one possession game becomes very exposed for you. So neither team can afford the ability to have any setbacks, have any mistakes. I do want to, with the positive play from this offensive line for the Giants and the possible return of JMS, I do want to say that I would take the attacking style of Wink Martindale in a game like this over the let's trust what we do. Let's allow a lot of talented playmakers to make plays. I feel like the Giants have shown over the course of this season they can get chunks of yardage. They can incrementally matriculate their way down the field. I like the idea that this Giants defense is clicking at the point and getting turnovers where they could maybe expose Zach Wilson in this game.
Yeah, they are. Wink Martindale's basically forcing the issue with design
Yep.
blitzes and pressures. And we know it's not always from Kayvon Thibodeau, even though he has looked significantly better in the last few games, getting pressure and getting sacks. The player for the Giants defense that I look at is Jason Pinnock because
Yeah.
he can impact the game in multiple areas, Adam. He can sit back and play and hope that Zach Wilson has a terrible throw and makes a mistake. I like him getting up near that offensive line and throwing out one of those blitzes where Zach Wilson isn't prepared for it, speeding up his internal clock and making him process decisions faster. He's the one player I look at on the Giants defense to say, I feel like there's one big play in Jason Pinnock in this game that could change things, whether it's picking off something deep or getting pressure on Zach Wilson fast.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you on that one. I like that call there. And I'm going to watch the Giants in totality. If I'm going to flip it over to the Jets side, we think about who is a player that we're concerned about. When you look across their defensive front, I want to make sure I note who has been their sack leader. It is Quentin Jefferson, actually, right now with 3. Bryce Huff out of the linebacker spot has 2.5. Quincy Williams out of the linebacker spot has 2 as well to go along with Jermaine Johnson. I look at the up the middle here for the Giants. That's why I mentioned JMS again. If that defense, we've seen this before, if they get blown up the gut, we know about the edge rush and that pressure, but we feel a little bit better about what we've had with Pugh and now with Phillips back in the fold. Blowing that thing up the middle is going to be problematic. We've seen, as I think this game ultimately comes down to, the ground attack. We have seen Sawuon Barkley hit some home runs since he's returned. We've seen him have nice chunk plays. But the other problem that we've seen is him getting hit 2 and 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And it's not when he's running towards the edges. It's not when he's trying to be shifty. This is right up the gut when it's a straight handoff north and south. So I need to see the Giants protect there because I really do. You talked about the number of carries that we've seen from him in the last couple of games. This feels destined to be about veteran Sawuon Barkley, young second-year player and Breece Hall, like these two players trying to go toe-to-toe with home run hits.
6.5 yards per carry. He has been electric. Like that is
Yep.
a huge number. If it wasn't for Devin Achan in Miami, everyone would be talking more about Breece Hall's home run ability because he does have it. The one thing that I keep thinking about is the Jets defense is good. Sauce Gardner is good. Sauce Gardner is great. Sorry.
Yep.
The way that I'm thinking about this is you have Deontay Banks against Garrett Wilson, which is going to
Yes.
be a huge matchup. Garrett Wilson looks the part of being a top line wide receiver, while Banks early on, it's only been 7 games, he looks to be the part of a guy that could go toe to toe with someone like Garrett Wilson. When you look at the Giants not necessarily having the cornerback depth that they'd like, with Trey Hawkins kind of mixed bag, Adoree Jackson been in and out, sometimes playing the slot. When you look at Darnay Holmes, Cordell Flott, Trey
Mhm.
Hawkins,
Mhm.
like they're going to be going against Randall Cobb. They're going to be going against Alan Lazard. Like there are other teams that have number 2s and number 3s where you feel like the Giants are at a significant disadvantage. This doesn't feel like one of those games where the Giants
No,
are really
no.
that far behind. Like Garrett Wilson is great. At least we have Deontay Banks to match up with him. The other ones, it feels like the Giants, like, I don't know, Darnay Holmes. Is he going to get is Randall Cobb going to blow Darnay Holmes out of the water like on a play? Like I don't
I
think he's got the speed for that at his age. So for me, it
I
just
hope
puts
not.
even more of an emphasis on Breece Hall is the way that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it also, by the way, when you can say, let's lock up Banks on Wilson, but then it also affords Wink Martindale to do some different things on the back end of the defense and say, hey, we're going to try to control Wilson in totality, right? Everyone's going to have a crack at this. Remember, we like the physicality of Banks. He's not the tallest cornerback in the world. So sometimes those one-on-one kind of jump ball scenarios can be a little bit dangerous for cornerbacks like that. But we'll see. You have over the top help with the safety group. I want to see them try to work these matchups. And to your point, boy, you better not hear about Randall Cobb, Lazar. Like if I hear some of these other names get mentioned and they had a really great game on Sunday, then that's just shame on a lot of these secondary personnel for the Giants, because you need to go in there and say, these are veteran guys. These are guys that are closer to the end and the beginning of their careers. We need to be able to do what we have to on our part so that we can rely on Banks against Wilson, so that we can take some chances bringing extra pressure on Zach Wilson. One clarifying statement around Breece Hall there. Sorry, because I had his stats up. He's had quiet games throughout the course of this season. The other side of his game, though, too, is last week, only 39 rushing yards, 54 receiving yards, 5 for 5 on his targets, right? So he's a both and kind of guy, 426 yards throughout the course of the season so far. This is where we flip over to our guy. This is where we flip over to Sawuon Barkley. This is where we say it's Saquon's time.
So I have a question for you. So
Hit me.
obviously the Giants have leaned heavily since Tyrod has come in on Saquon Barkley. 45 rush attempts over the last 2 games. They are giving him the ball early and often.
That's right.
Here's a question that came to my mind. It feels like Zach Wilson and Tyrod Taylor, similar positions in terms of like, don't lose us the game. Just try to like make sure the offense moves a little bit. The key to the game feels like Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley. If I told you that you could have the opportunity to say Tyrod outplayed Zach Wilson or Saquon Barkley outplayed Breece Hall, which one would you feel leads the Giants to victory more often?
Think Saquon is critical to this game. I think we'll see a lot of carries for him, but we mentioned it there. Again, the Giants don't have a true number one, but they have Darren Waller. They have Jalen Hyatt. They have Wan'Dale Robinson, even though they only use them for like 3 plays a game. Like the Giants have playmakers in this receiving core that I do think are more important to their success in this game, even in small samples, than the rest of the cast for the New York Jets outside of the running back room.
I fully appreciate that. I do. It's just one of those things where I think Saquon Barkley taking over this game is the path to victory, because I
Oh,
think
yes,
points are going to
yes.
be at an absolute premium in this one.
So what do you? Yeah, I mean, we talk about, you mentioned there, and we'll get into our official predictions here. But Saquon Barkley, he has had now in the last 2 games since returning 24 carries and 21 carries respectively, has not gotten over 4 yards per carry, going all the way back to the season opener against the Dallas Cowboys. We understand the struggles of the offensive line. What I really liked in this last game was 3 catches on 4 targets for 41 yards. That gave him over 100 all-purpose yards in this game. Obviously, the fumble was unacceptable, but he took that on the chin afterwards and said he's going to clean it up. When we talk about a game that comes in with the Giants technically at home, getting 3 points, a money line plus 124, and an over-under at a microscopic, although the Tennessee Titans and Falcons are lower, 36.5. Where is your initial take on where this game goes? How you leaning?
This to
Emotional.
me is the hardest game so far. Now, I will caveat that the Dallas Cowboys absolutely destroyed the Giants on opening night, and I thought the Giants would win that game. So I could not
Sure.
have been more wrong. But prior to the
Right.
game,
It was easy. It's easier to pick games when you don't think they're going to go as badly as they turn out to, right? You're like, this is easy, buddy. Why? There's no problem here.
right, this game does feel like a coin flip. It does, because all of the things that we just mentioned, like if you
Right.
consider the quarterback play relatively neutral, if you consider the home run ability of Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley a little bit neutral, if you consider the fact that the defenses are both humming on all cylinders, especially the last few games, it feels relatively neutral. So then the question
Mm.
is, what is the one thing that changes the game? Is it a big turnover? Is it a big touchdown pass? Is it a big play? That is where I just struggle with trying to figure this out, because with Tyrod Taylor, the Giants offense, while it has moved the ball a little bit more effectively than the previous weeks, still only scored 14 and 9 points. It's not like they're putting up 24 points or 28 points. So the points just continue to be at a premium. Uh, I, I am struggling with where I think this is going to go, but ultimately, this is the last stand for the Giants. I think the Giants have more to play for than the Jets do in this game. I really, really do, because the Jets could lose this game and they're going to continue on business as usual and say, we still need to do the same things that we're doing. We're not sellers at the deadline. We're going to move forward the same way that we have. If the Giants lose this game, there are some hard decisions that have to be made on veterans like Adoree Jackson and others to say, we're 2-6. Where do we go from here? So for me, I'm looking at this as the last stand for the Giants. I'm looking at it to say the Giants defense makes one more play against Zach Wilson than the Jets defense makes against Tyrod Taylor. I trust Tyrod Taylor just a little bit more as a veteran over Zach Wilson. So I think that turnover is going to come. I'm going to go with the Giants winning the game 14-10 in a low scoring game with the bigger mistake loses.
Listen, I mean, real quick here. While I agree with you on the Jets can still steady as they go, but after the Giants, they play the Chargers. They're a weird team, but they're certainly
Stink.
explosive. They have a good offense. The Raiders, but then the Buffalo Bills and the Dolphins after that. So like their next 4 games, there could be 3 losses out of those next 4 after this matchup with the Giants. And if they want to salvage, there's a world here. They have talked about, if you talk about the way people look at the Jets season, it's you cannot afford to lose this game against the Giants because you're going to have some tough tests as you continue to work your way through. But when you're 2-5, that's the way this goes. When you were 1-5, every single game is absolutely critical. You touched on it, man. You seem like you don't have necessarily as high a level of confidence as I do. I believe in Tyrod Taylor as an error-free quarterback. Like that is one of the staples of his career. He doesn't do the sexy things for you all the time, but he protects the football. I believe in Sawuon Barkley, obviously, and his ability to get some things going on the ground here. And I believe that if we're talking turnovers, yes, Zach Wilson is going to be the guy that can get exposed here. This comes down to me, Kayvon Thibodeau. It comes down to Bobby Okereke again, to Micah McFadden. Hey, get in there. Carve your way through this offensive line. Force Zach Wilson to make some tough decisions. I think that he has played better football, certainly. He has turned the narrative from absolute dumpster fire to serviceable quarterback in terms of where his career stands. So I'm not dumping on Zach, but he is the more exposable guy here. I think Wink Martindale is the system that gives you better chances to confuse Zach Wilson, to put him under pressure. I think it does come down to a turnover here. I'm going to take the Giants in this one as well. I'm not bullish, but I am pretty confident in it. And by the way, if we're going to have that conversation about little bets that we put in, exact score 17-9 New York Football Giants. It's plus 33,000, Andy. You can win some money on that if you want to drop that in.
Adam, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
After completely shunning this team last week and telling them they got no chance to beat the Washington Commanders behind my Tyrod Taylor, you now do a complete 180 and have the ultimate confidence that this team is going to get a victory. I had a conservative 17-13 win for the Giants last week. They ended up winning 14-7. I was a little bit off. But you know what? I never wavered. On my guy, Tyrod Taylor. I'm not wavering on him now. I still think the Giants can get the W.
I don't think that all these narratives are entirely accurate, but nevertheless, the both of us will be taking the New York Football Giants. So obviously, if you want to take the points, you could in this game. You know what else you can also do is you can go over to subtext.com. We'll have the link in our show description. We're going to post it up over on Twitter. Andy's bet of the week. We're going to have that segment back into the official podcast show, but you can go over right now. He's going to break down some of those key stats and give you 3 plays for Sunday, all New York Football Giants picks. And there's a little sleeper inside that wide receiver room for you as well. They call that a tease in the business. Go check out that link. Check out Andy's write-up as we're going to be tracking his betting numbers all season long, which we don't have to track mine. But when I hit home runs, then I hit home runs and I take all the credit in the world. So 17-9, boys. 17-9. That's the magic number here. Until next time, though, get us on YouTube at One Giant Podcast. Get us over on Twitter at One Giant Podcast, at AndyMac214, at Adam Armbrecht. We'll be back again talking about a 3-5 New York Football Giants team and fending off the narratives around the trade deadline speculation. Until then, though, as Andrew Makowitz wants, needs, and demands the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.